The story begins on a crisp autumn morning in Columbus, Ohio. The air has that mix of cool bite and golden sunlight that makes every street look like a movie set. The maples and oaks are dressed in amber and red jackets of leaves, while the suburban neighborhood hums with the faint sound of delivery trucks and school buses. Inside a modest two-bedroom apartment in a red-brick building that had seen better paint jobs, Ethan Parker wakes up to the sound of his alarm clock. The clock itself was nothing fancy, one of those discount store finds with the snooze button worn out, but for Ethan, it was a daily trumpet call, a reminder that life doesn't pause just because the paycheck is small. Ethan, in his early 30s, worked as a customer service representative for a credit card company. His shirt collection was an assortment of half-faded button-downs, ties bought on clearance, and a single decent blazer he reserved for big days. His salary was modest, let's just say his monthly rent and grocery bills often shook hands like two old wrestlers trying to see who'd win. But his dreams, they were skyscraper tall. He tied his shoelaces while humming to himself, staring at a small vision board taped to the wall above his desk. Pictures of houses with wraparound porches, a used Tesla he found on Craigslist, a beach with turquoise waves, and a scribbled phrase that read, "Salary doesn't define my future, but effort does." Outside his window, kids wearing hoodies and carrying oversized backpacks were running to the school bus, their laughter filling the crisp air. A retired neighbor, Mr. Jennings, was already out with his lawn chair, sipping coffee from a tall thermos, waving at everyone like the unofficial mayor of the block. This was America in its simple, everyday poetry, neighbors waving, the mailman honking at the kids, joggers in neon sneakers pounding the sidewalks. Ethan grabbed his thrift store briefcase, kissed the corner of a photo frame showing his late mom, and whispered, "Let's make today count." Instead of driving, Ethan took the city bus most days. Gas prices had been eating into his already slim budget, so public transport was his moving office of thoughts. The bus was a melting pot of America, a nurse in scrubs scrolling through her phone, a teenager with AirPods nodding to hip-hop beats, a construction worker still yawning from last night's overtime shift. Ethan usually sat by the window, jotting down ideas in a spiral notebook. While others saw the bus ride as wasted time, he saw it as dream-fueling time. He scribbled plans for a startup he wanted to build someday, notes for a podcast idea, even half a comedy script about living on a small salary. A woman in her 50s, Mrs. Callahan, who often took the same bus, leaned over with a friendly smirk. "Still writing in that little notebook, Ethan? You know, people type on laptops these days." He grinned. "Yes, Mom. But when this notebook turns into a book deal, you'll get the first signed copy." The bus shook with laughter from nearby passengers. Even in a world of small salaries, humor was free, and Ethan made sure he spread it like butter on toast. The office building was glass on the outside but gray on the inside. Rows of cubicles lined like an army of cardboard boxes, each one decorated with family photos, funny memes, and mugs declaring, "World's okayest employee." Ethan's desk wasn't glamorous. He had a sticky note collection that could wallpaper a bathroom, a coffee mug that said, "Don't talk to me until Friday," and a tiny cactus plant named Spike. His manager, Carol, was known for her strictness. She wore navy blazers and heels that clacked like gavels on the office floor. She expected numbers, not daydreams. But Ethan couldn't help daydreaming anyway. During calls with cranky customers, he smiled as if he were on a stage. He scribbled funny one-liners between tasks, little notes to remind himself that life wasn't just about answering phones, it was about answering the bigger call of who you want to become. Around lunchtime, Ethan's coworkers gathered in the break room, microwaving frozen meals, swapping gossip about weekend football, and complaining about the vending machine. Ethan, with his peanut butter sandwich and off-brand chips, joined them. "Man," said Dave, a colleague in a polo shirt that was one size too small, "if we got paid what we're worth, I'd already have a boat." Ethan smirked. "With my salary, I'd settle for a kayak." The room erupted with laughter. Even in the dullness of 1905, humor was like oxygen. When the office lights dimmed, Ethan's real work began. He went back home, pulled out his second-hand laptop, and worked on freelance writing gigs. His living room was also his startup garage, his creative studio, and his comedy stage. The old ceiling fan spun slowly, creaking like it had arthritis. A small lamp lit his desk, where notebooks, dollar store pens, and a used keyboard all teamed up in the pursuit of his dreams. Ethan didn't own much. His couch had a stubborn spring poking out, his TV remote was taped together, his shoes had walked more miles than some road trips. But his ambition was limitless. He often video called his friend Jenna, a schoolteacher with equal parts sarcasm and support. "Ethan," she said one night, laughing at his idea for a motivational comedy podcast, "only you would try to mix jokes with life advice. Who's gonna listen to that?" "Everyone who's broke but refuses to stay broke," he replied with a grin. That night, as the clock struck midnight, Ethan typed with fire in his fingers. His dream wasn't just to make more money, it was to inspire others that a small salary can be the soil where big dreams grow. The camera of life pans out on Ethan's small apartment. Outside, the autumn wind shakes the trees, scattering leaves across the parking lot like golden confetti. Inside, a man with a small paycheck but a giant heart sits in front of a laptop, smiling as if the future had already sent him an RSVP. Because dreams don't check your bank balance before they knock on your door. They just ask if you're willing to open it. The story picks up 6 months later, with winter loosening its grip and spring peeking in like a shy guest. The city of Columbus, Ohio, was thawing out, lawns waking up in bright green, neighbors finally shaking the snow off their porches, and coffee shops switching their menu boards from pumpkin spice to iced lattes. For Ethan Parker, those 6 months had been a marathon on a treadmill set at Too Fast, Too Furious. His days were still clocked in at the cubicle jungle, but his nights had bloomed into something else entirely. His podcast, Dreams Bigger Than Paychecks, had started as a small experiment. Now, it had sprouted wings. The podcast wasn't fancy. He recorded episodes in his apartment with a $40 microphone, the hum of his fridge occasionally sneaking into the background, and his neighbor's dog barking like a co-host. But what people loved wasn't the sound quality, it was Ethan's storytelling. His mix of motivational truths and laugh-out-loud anecdotes became a weekly dose of hope for hundreds, then thousands, of listeners across the U.S. Scene opens on Ethan's apartment, the same old red brick building, but inside the atmosphere feels charged. A whiteboard stands in the corner filled with goals, podcast episode ideas, and doodles of stick figures climbing mountains labeled Student Debt and Monday Blues. On his desk, that cactus named Spike now has a bigger pot, gifted by Jenna. She'd taped a note on it, even cacti need room to grow. So do you. Emails poured in from strangers across America, truck drivers in Nebraska, college students in Florida, single moms in Texas, all saying his words helped them through tough days. One email from a firefighter read, "Man, your jokes about living paycheck to paycheck made me laugh so hard. But your reminder about pushing forward, that's what I needed on a 24-hour shift." Ethan often leaned back in his thrift store chair, reading those messages, shaking his head in disbelief. His salary hadn't grown much, but his impact had. And that was priceless. At the office, things shifted too. The cubicle still stood like dull Lego bricks, but coworkers started seeing Ethan differently. "Hey, podcast guy," Dave called out one Monday, holding his microwave burrito like a trophy. "You're basically famous now." Carol, the manager with blazer-sharp discipline, even stopped by his desk one afternoon. She crossed her arms and said, "I listened to one of your episodes, Ethan. I don't know how you find the energy after answering calls all day, but keep it up." That was her version of a standing ovation. One warm Saturday evening, Jenna nudged Ethan into signing up for an open mic storytelling night at a local coffeehouse called the Rusty Mug. The place had exposed brick walls, Edison bulb lighting, chalkboard menus, and college students in flannels pretending to write novels on their laptops. Ethan stood backstage, tugging at his blazer, the big day blazer he'd saved for job interviews and funerals. His palms were sweating. He had told stories behind a microphone in his apartment, but never in front of actual breathing humans sipping overpriced cappuccinos. Jenna, sipping a caramel latte, whispered, "You're gonna kill it. Just remember, don't trip over the mic cord. That's my job as your friend, not yours." When his name was called, Ethan walked up, his sneakers squeaking against the wood floor. He looked at the crowd, teachers, delivery drivers, baristas, retirees. Everyday Americans, each carrying their own struggles, their own dreams. And then, he spoke. He told stories about working with a small paycheck, like stretching a $50 grocery run into a week of experimental recipes, or fixing a leaky faucet with duct tape and prayer. He mixed humor with heart, reminding the crowd that a small salary might limit your wallet, but it doesn't have to limit your imagination. The room erupted in laughter, then applause, then something even better, nodding heads, the kind that say, "I feel that. I've lived that." By the time he left the stage, the owner of the coffeehouse shook his hand. That was real. People need real. Come back anytime. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Ethan started getting invited to small events, church groups, community centers, even a high school assembly. He found himself standing in gymnasiums with American flags draped on the walls, speaking to kids in hoodies and sneakers about ambition. He cracked jokes about adulting and rent prices, but also told them that dreams don't wait for you to get rich, they wait for you to get started. Parents came up afterward, shaking his hand, saying things like, "My son needed to hear that," or "My daughter's been doubting herself, thank you." The paycheck from his day job was still modest. His apartment still had creaky floors. His car was still a second-hand Honda Civic with a radio that only worked on odd days. But Ethan's life was proof that richness wasn't measured in dollars alone. One rainy afternoon, as thunder rolled over Columbus and the smell of wet asphalt filled the air, Ethan opened an email that stopped him cold. It was from a small but growing publishing house in New York City. They'd been following his podcast. They wanted him to write a book, part memoir, part motivational comedy, called Salary Small, Dreams Big. Ethan read the email 3 times. He laughed, then cried, then laughed again like someone who couldn't believe the universe had just handed him a yes, after years of not yet. He called Jenna immediately. Guess who's about to be an author? He shouted into the phone. You, she guessed. No, LeBron James. Of course me. Jenna screamed so loud the neighbor's dog barked. That weekend, Ethan invited friends and coworkers to his apartment. He didn't have fancy champagne, so he bought sparkling cider from Walmart. He didn't have catered food, so he made chili in a slow cooker and grilled hot dogs on his tiny balcony grill. But the laughter was loud, the plates were full, and the living room buzzed with joy. Dave raised a paper cup. To Ethan, the only guy the first know who can make $1 stretch like yoga. The room exploded with cheers. As the night wound down, Ethan stepped onto his balcony. The spring air was cool, the city skyline glowing faintly in the distance. He looked up at the stars, the free kind of wealth, scattered endlessly across the Ohio sky. He whispered to himself, salary small, dreams big. That's all I need. The voiceover fades out with the message. Sometimes, the paycheck won't grow as fast as your dreams. But if you keep showing up, keep laughing through the struggle, and keep chasing purpose, life has a way of surprising you. In America, or anywhere, the richest life isn't always the one with the biggest salary. It's the one with the biggest heart for the dream.
Daily happiness and motivation is hitting in. Like and subscribe.